Right. So our next presenter is Dr. Rochelle Stevens. And Rochelle currently works for WWF-Australia as the Species Conservation Co-ordinator, and Rochelle is based in Perth. Rochelle will be providing an overview of WWF's programs, and we'll get a bit more of an insight into how they to build community appreciation of nature as well. So thanks a lot, Rochelle. The floor's yours.
Thanks very much, Ingrid. I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, thank you again for having me join in today's session. This is actually my first, public speaking event in my role with WWF Australia. I have been with the organisation since March, so it's all quite new and I'm learning a lot about this massive organisation that I am very lucky to have joined. And I've come from the Threatened Species Recovery Hub, which I was also based at UQ with. So come from research into this large NGO space, and yeah, it's been a learning process. So the projects that I'm speaking to you about today, I haven't had a lot of direct involvement with. So if you do have questions at the end, I will do my best and we'll see how we go with answering those. So we do have several projects running relevant for threatened species in Western Australia. And just to give you an idea of where they sit in WWF Australia's broader strategic plan, we do have 6 key themes that we are working in as of our most recent strategic plan, which came out last year. It's been through a little bit of a refresh given the bushfires and COVID. So we have got some other things happening which are really exciting to help assist with the bushfire recovery. But with the WA Threatened Species Program, it does sit really squarely within our Save Threatened Species priority. We also work quite a lot with our traditional landowner partners up in the Kimberley. So we also tap quite strongly into one of our additional priorities, which is conserve nature with equity. But as you can see, we do have a quite a broad cross-section of themes and priorities that we're working in, so as a large organisation. So drilling down into WA, I'm going to touch a little bit first on our Kimberley program. Leanne Woolley is the Species Conservation Manager for WA with WWF Australia, and Leanne is overseeing the work that's happening up in the Kimberley. So in the Dampier bioregion, we have a few species that we're focusing our work on up there. Black-footed rock wallabies, Gouldian finches, spectacled hair wallabies and bilbies. And then in the North Kimberley bioregion, it's a bit more of a broader cross-section of species around the critical weight range mammals. And Leanne is leading a lot of work up in the Kimberley around habitat impact management with particular and fine-scale fire impacts on the habitats up there, and drawing on a lot of the Indigenous in the broader landscape to learn about and implement that right way approach to fire management. And they're seeing some really promising outcomes from the work so far, which is only just beginning. So stay tuned for that, and I can definitely link anybody in with Leanne if they want some more information about what we're doing up there. In the southwest, we do have, again, work around the black-flanked rock wallabies, and the project that we're working on there is a bit of a tandem project, again, with the Kimberley work around community-led recovery of the species. And we also have a project in the southwest on numbats, which is working with a PhD student at UWA. We also have a project on quackers on the mainland in particular, looking at recovery of the species in the area that was affected by bushfire back in 2015 around Northcliffe. And we have our Spring Kent Quend account, which is a community-based citizen science project, which has been going since 2013. So WWF and DBCA have been working on that for quite some time together. It was not run last year because there has been a bit of a staffing absence with WWF in the region down here in the southwest. But since I've come on board, I've been pretty keen to get that one up and running again, and for this year at least. So if I speak a little bit about some of the outcomes so far with the Kimberley work, so with the Gouldy and finches, there's been some fantastic outcomes using call playback to map the breeding habitat for the species around the Dampier Peninsula. A lot of that work is happening in an Indigenous protected area across 2 ranger groups that look after that area that have been really fantastic stewards for the region, particularly women rangers, which is an area of work that WWF is very passionate about. And it was very exciting to be able to map this breeding habitat for these Gouldy and finches that was actually previously completely unknown in the Dampier Peninsula. So tapping into using technology that's available to us, coupled with traditional land management and presence of Indigenous on country, has really yielded some fantastic results for the work up there. Again, using cross-cultural relationships, we have been working on spectacled hare wallabies. There was a sense that the environment suggested these species were persisting on Yawuru country, and after some concerted efforts using camera trap surveys, they sure enough have rediscovered the species in that area on Yawuru country after it had been presumed absent for in the vicinity of 30 years. So again, really positive outcome, and just goes to show the benefits of pulling together as many different perspectives as we can and pairing it with the cutting edge technology and just what you can achieve. Black-footed rock wallabies in the Kimberley, we have been using some interesting survey technologies, again using cameras, but also on-ground methods, looking at optimising long-term monitoring for the species in the Erskine Ranges and Grant Ranges. And if you'd like any further information about that work, please do let me know and I can hook you up with Leanne. In the southwest, the black-flanked rock wallaby occurs in that wheat belt region, and we commenced a project a couple of years ago, which again, as a result of the staffing absence in the southwest, actually was put on pause, but we have kicked it off in the last 12 months. And so some of the key activities that we're doing are scat surveys, we're doing some habitat improvement and augmentation, as well as restoring some of the fences in the reserves where this species occurs. And I can give you some findings from recent visits and trapping events out in the wheat belt. We had 73 animals captured in our last trapping event, and 19 of them were new individuals. And it was looking like most females of breeding age did indeed have young with them. So really promising with that work getting well underway now. So we are working with local community in that region as well, and advocating for some stewardship among those communities for the species. The Numbat project is, as I said, the work of PhD candidate Sian Thorne at UWA, and she is very fortunate to be able to head down to the Upper Warren and have a look for these little critters, which apparently can be quite hard to keep an eye on when you're out doing active search for them. They move quick and they're quite difficult to keep track of. But Sian's project is basically looking at how we can understand a bit more about this population, which is lesser known relative to the Dryandra population in Numbats, yet a larger population. So there's more individuals to get a track of in that region in the Upper Warren. We're looking at determining the factors that limit survivorship and recruitment for Numbats in the Upper Warren, trying to work out what they like in the habitat, in terms of their habitat preferences, which elements and characteristics really drive their survival in that landscape in the Upper Warren, and using some of this cutting edge technology around forensic science to determine what might be causing mortality of the species in the region. So some of the interesting work that Sian has been doing and has found so far is that it's the first time that GPS collars have been used on numbats, and it gives us some location tracking for the species up to 10 times a day for 2 weeks at a time, each time the collar is put on the animal. They do use a lot of logs and burrows across a range, and some of the individuals really go for very big logs, which is very interesting in terms of coarse woody debris on the forest floor. I mean, some of these logs that they're really favouring are over 1 metre in diameter, which I guess just really reinforces the need for old growth forest. For something as little as a numbat even, it can be critical. It turns out that their fur stripes are quite unique in that you can get down to being able to identify individuals from camera images, which of course, with further investigation, may help us to get some really more robust population estimates for the species, but that is in its infancy, that theory at the moment. But it is promising to be able to identify individuals based on their individual markings. And again, in a bit of a good news story, most of the females that Sian's monitored have had young with them, and the project that she has been working on has meant that she's been able to observe these young from being attached to their mother all the way through to dispersal so far. So, which has been really interesting about learning that mother offspring relationship in the species. So for our cute little selfie-loving quackers, this particular photo was taken on Rottnest. However, it's not necessarily well known among a lot of people that quackers do occur in quite good numbers on the mainland in some places. However, sadly, one of the bigger populations was affected by a fire in 2015 in Northcliffe, down again in that Upper Warren, almost getting into the Great Southern regions. So the study that we have been working with Dr. Carleen Bain, she's been doing the bulk of the on-ground work for this project, was to determine, what was the impact of the fires, and then what factors are going to drive that population to recovery. So identifying some of those post-fire habitat refuges for the species, and in light of all of that, provide land managers with guidance on how best to manage the quackers post-fire. So, which of course is not looking like that part of their life history is going away anywhere soon. So lessons that we've learnt so far from the work we've been doing around Northcliffe. So pre-fires, thought that there was about just shy of 600 actually, so a bit more than 500 individuals around Northcliffe, and sadly after the fire that had dropped to under 100. So we did lose quite a big proportion of the population down there. Getting on the ground and monitoring really quickly after the fire. So from 2016 till now, we've been doing this work. Carleen's work has found that those in minimally impacted patches or refuges were really critical for the species just after the fire. And that if there were pigs in the landscape, this really does hamper their ability to utilise areas that do start to recover quickly after a fire. So those refuges were doubly important where we had pigs coming into the more disturbed areas straight afterwards. More generally speaking, when it comes to habitat preferences, it's also become very clear that the quackers do favour vegetation that has a really well-developed mid-story and then quite dense understory, and really dominated by those sedge species. So your lepidospermins and things like that, the grassy, sedgy, clumpy stuff is really part of the landscape that the quackers need for that shelter factor and the microclimate that delivers. And then finally, the Quenada project that we've been working on with DBCA, predominantly in the Greater Perth region, has been around tracking the population trends of the species, and it uses a structured survey methodology with local residents, and it's fantastic effort in engaging the public in citizen science in that urban and peri-urban environment, but being able to do it using this structured survey methodology has really given the data a whole other level of rigor and power to be able to tell certain trends about what's happening with Quenada, which is a priority for species in WA, and seems to be that last bandicoot holding on in these urban and peri-urban environments. So really reinforcing with the public the importance of that message and educating them about what threats bandicoots and indeed Quenada face in that urban environment, and how important it is to continue to advocate for responsible pet ownership and similar in the urban environment if this species is going to continue to buck the trend of all other bandicoots around Australia. So results so far from the Quenada count is really fantastic. I mean, we have now 6 years of data in the can. We've had 350 people that have counted Quenada for us across 370 sites from Perth all the way to Busselton, and the bulk of those have been around Perth in previous years. However, this year I'm really hoping to extend to include more participants around the rest of the southwest. We have found adults with young in 13% of those 370 sites, which a family of little Quenada is super cute to see. And if you're in Perth and you ever get up to Mundaring, Cafe Mojo has a really fantastic little population of Quenada around there, and you can often have your coffee and watch a little family of Quenada running around in the garden around you. It's fantastic. Quenada digging is present at 99% of the sites, and this is key because it can serve as a surrogate measure for presence of the species at the very least, but also illustrates their ability as an ecosystem engineer, and the role that digging mammals can play in the landscape is critical. There's been work come out that has illustrated the importance Quenada can have for fuel loads in urban patches. So being able to see them performing this ecosystem service as well, and again using that as the underpinning of some of the messaging we give to people about Quenada is really important. They may curse on one hand they're digging up their garden, but then when you let them know that actually they're helping with keeping fuel loads down, you start to share the message in a way that they start to see the benefit to them of those Quenada diggings. We also do ask people to tell us if they have any speculations about what may have caused a dead Quenada when they come across. The poor little guy has perished. So 49% of the deaths were thought to be as a result of roadkill. And that's a bit sad, followed by cat attack and pool drownings and dogs in backyards. So the urban environment, they're doing okay, they're holding on, but it is definitely not without its hazards for the species. So where to from here for WWF? As I said, I've joined with a pretty predominantly research-based background, and also we've had an absence in the region for about 18 months now. So it's about sort of finding our feet in the southwest again, identifying those opportunities. But the themes that we're sort of looking at are around enhancing resilience, of course, of threatened species in the face of climate change and changing landscapes and human communities. Quite a focus on regional communities in that regard, and I guess that leads into the next point around building capacity, not just for the species to persist with us, but those human communities that they're living with. Nurturing the partnership. So WWF has had a pretty strong presence in the southwest for many years, and so reigniting and nurturing the relationships and partnerships that we had before. and looking for opportunities to collaborate going forward. Continuing to communicate some of the outcomes of the work that we've been doing, are doing, and particularly in the north, in the Kimberley, some really fantastic good news stories coming out of that work. And I think that we all could do with good news stories. So I'm hoping to be leading the charge in getting some of that really empowering messaging out there. And again, to identify and prioritise some of the conservation actions we need here in the southwest. They may well be on-ground actions, but they can also and probably should also really focus on some of the policy implications of the work that we're doing and how that can drive land management in the southwest for conservation and threatened species going forward. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rochelle. That was really interesting. And I think we've got some feedback and some questions already coming through. So if anyone else has them, please go into the Q&A, have a look and add your question. And in particular, it's good to see the theme, I suppose, around the role of community and how we as individuals can play a part in the in threatened species management and identification of where they are and how they're going.